Welcome. I'm your host, Julie Poole, a law of attraction coach, hypnotherapist, and spiritual teacher. This show is for anyone interested in living their best life on all levels, mind, body, and soul. My aim is to uplift, inform, and inspire you. So let's chat and move you from hoping to having. Hello and welcome to today's episode. And today I want to talk to you about unconditional love. What I've learned about it, what I'm still learning, and hopefully you might be able to learn something too, or share with me your learning if you want to put any comments below. So some of you will know I put a post up a few days ago on my YouTube channel saying that I can't get to the YouTube readings at the moment. I got a family crisis going on with my frail elderly mum, and I need to be there at the moment. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So those of you around my age, late 50s, early 60s, may find yourself in a similar position with elderly, frail parents, 70s, 80s, 90s, who are becoming more and more vulnerable and needing our support. And for those of us still working full-time, like myself, with 3 children and 3 grandchildren, we're busy people. But we are expected to drop everything to be there for our elderly parents. And some of us will and some of us won't, and that's all right. But for me, it's been a challenge, and I want to talk to you about that because I have had a dreadful relationship with my mother for as far back as I can ever remember. So to put her first has been extremely challenging in terms of unconditional love and patience. So it's helped me to really see what is unconditional love, and can we truly step into that purity where we expect nothing, where we need nothing, where we purely give and gift from the heart, no matter the circumstances or the challenges or the resistance. It has really helped me to understand unconditional love so much more than I ever have before. And it's helpful to put it in context. So here I am approaching 60. My business is thriving. I'm busy. I love my work. I have 3 grown-up children and their married partners. They have children too. And I want to have some time and balance in my life to see my friends and my children and my grandchildren and be there for my elderly parents. So my dad is 84 and was diagnosed with dementia 2 years ago. And his 80-year-old wife is his primary carer. She's very fit and healthy, but exhausted from caring for my dad. So I try and visit them every couple of weeks to give them emotional support and just show that I'm there. But I like them and I get on with them. And so it's been easy to do over the last 2 years. They don't need anything from me particularly other than some emotional support and a bit of my time, which I've been happy to give. My mother, on the other hand, is a different matter. She'll be 86 next month. And she has been extremely vulnerable and challenging all her life, not just into her old age. Old age and frailty has increased her vulnerability, her neediness, her dependency, her expectations, but they've always been there. Now, it's important to put it in context, I think, to help really balance things out. So apparently, before the age of 6 or 7, Mum was quite normal, quite a normal mum, according to my older sister. I don't recall this. I just recall what she was like after my father left home and my mother fell into a complete heap of mess. turning to alcohol and lots of medication from the doctor for uppers, downers, sleeping tablets, Valium, tranquilizers, anti-anxiety pills, and lots of alcohol, which doesn't mix. Now, all of that, it was her way of coping, because her coping ability is basically non-existent. And these things that people use, like these different medications and alcohol, they're anesthetics. They numb the pain, the panic, the fear to a level where we can cope. But of course, they can get abused and it can backfire. 5 years on, I was removed from the toxicity and the violence and the difficulties of living with mum and went to live with my dad. But in those 5 years, there was a lot of screaming and shouting and scenes and tantrums and a lot of slaps around the face, the head, a lot of violence around me. I actually have problems with my hearing because of the constant whack across the side of my face and side of my head if I was out of line, and it damaged my eardrums. So when I was 16, I had to go back to live with my mum for a little while because my dad went abroad. So I was back with mum, and my dad was paying child maintenance. The day I left school at 16, the child maintenance stopped and my mother packed my bags. I came home from school on my last day and my bags were packed at the door. She said, "I'm not having any money for you. You're not welcome here. Leave." So I left. I spent, I think, one night, might have been two, it's a long time ago, living rough under a bridge out of the rain with literally a carrier bag, when I saw one of my friends who said to me, "Julie, frankly, you smell and you're dirty." And I said, "My mum's thrown me out." And she said, "Oh my goodness me, come and live with us." So I was given a roof over my head. Suffice to say, things were very difficult between me and my mother for the next 5 years, and then I tried again in my early 20s to connect with her, but it didn't work. So she has not really been a part of my life. I tried repeatedly through the years to find a way through. I had her for most Christmases for about 12 years, and she ruined every Christmas for me, my husband, and my children at the time. She is extremely difficult and challenging. I walked away from that relationship many times. Sometimes for 2 years, sometimes for 5 years. I would just not contact her and say, "I'm busy." I wouldn't answer the phone. I wouldn't go see her. I just stepped back. And then after a while, I would think, maybe she has grown up and out of this now. She's in her 40s, or she's in her 50s, or she's in her 60s. Perhaps she's more tolerable. And I'd give her another chance. And she'd behave for a little while. And then the verbal abuse would start again, which I wouldn't tolerate. So I would just tell her quietly, "No, Mum, it's not all right to say those things to me or speak to me like that." And if she didn't stop, which she didn't, I'd step away again. And that went on for a long time. Anyway, comes up to about 2.5 years ago. I had been living away for over 30 years, 200 miles away. And I made the decision to move back. Both my elderly parents are getting more and more frail, and I have 2 sons and their wives and a granddaughter here, and it felt right to move back. And my higher self said to me, "There is a purpose for you to come back for a while. I don't feel I'll be here forever, but for now, while my parents are still alive, it feels right to spend some time with them in their last few years before they transition back to spirit." So over the last 2.5 years, I have been trying to give some support to my mum. It's been an interesting time. So what I discovered when I came back, and I hadn't seen her for about 10 years, there's a big difference with 72 and 82. And she had, the other side of COVID, become very frail. She had stopped going out for 2 years. She'd stopped getting on a bus. She'd stopped going anywhere, and she'd lost not only her confidence, but she'd lost her fitness and strength in her physical body to go walking and go do things. She has literally turned into a frail old lady from that period. So when I came back in 2021, I was quite shocked to see the decline in her height, her stature, her health, and her demeanour. Much more vulnerable, much more childlike. And it's been interesting because in that 2 years, I have tried to see her at least once a month, take her out for a coffee, take her out for a drive. She is incredibly demanding. Nothing has changed. She is a narcissist. The world revolves around her and her needs. And whilst that's been, well, it has been very, almost at times, impossible to deal with, it's interesting the way my perspective changed when I saw this 82-year-old woman behaving so badly. It reminded me of a toddler. You know, the terrible twos and the tantruming threes. The children are just, you know, they can kick and bite and scratch and lash out, and they are a challenge, and they're very demanding and very needy, and we do it without hesitation when it's our child. And I looked at my mother in this new light, and I thought, she's just like a child. She's like a 4-year-old. She's needy and clingy and frightened and vulnerable, and she acts up and acts out like a child. And something inside me dissolved, melted about this protection that I need to put in place for myself with my mother constantly. For 58 years, put the protection in place against my mother so her words, her venom, her anger, her tantrums don't get to me. And I suddenly realised with this frail, vulnerable 82-year-old, I'm no longer at risk. I don't need to have my shields up, my barriers up. I don't need to protect myself. I'm 5'8". She's now about 5 foot. She's shrunk about 5 inches. She's tiny. She's frail. She's frightened. And she's like a child. So the triggers dissolved. And so even though the behaviour is still pretty appalling, this new patience and tolerance came in. You know, for those of you who have or had children, you know, we can be out in public in a restaurant or in a cafe, and our 3 or 4-year-old has a tantrum in public, and, you know, it's inconvenient, and we might pick them up and take them outside. But people generally will understand that there is a badly behaved child and the parent looks terribly embarrassed, but it is what it is. And I started seeing my mother in the same way, because she too will create a scene, and she did Christmas Day in a restaurant last Christmas, screaming and shouting, "Medic, medic, I need a medic," and creating a massive scene in the restaurant, which I was hugely embarrassed about. She had indigestion. She didn't need a medic, but she did love the attention. This is my mum. So anyway, I've found a way to deal with it and to continue to support her. And then the last 6 months, her independence has continued to decline. She lives independently. There is no support in place. There is only me. Now, I am one of 3 children, and my brother and sister live in Australia. They couldn't get away from her fast enough. She has 10 grandchildren, and not one of them has any contact with her because they can't stand her. She has no friends because nobody will put up with her bad behaviour. So literally the only person in the world who will deal with her, support her, and give her any help is me. And so I've had to put very clear boundaries in place of my time, what's available, my energy, what's available, and what I can and can't do. So in the last few months, I've become very aware that her needs are increasing, whereas my ability to meet her needs is not increasing, and the gap is widening. So I spent some months trying to persuade her to allow me to contact social services and Age Concern and various support organisations. There are support services, there's befriending services, there's all sorts of help, and she was absolutely resistant to it. So I continued chipping away, and then I asked Spirit, please help me. She definitely needs more support now. I'm going to have to go above her head. So I went directly to social services and to her GP, her doctor. And this last week, that ball has started moving. And I've spent a lot of time talking with social services and her GP. And she's now going to be assessed for dementia, because I absolutely can feel the Alzheimer's is beginning. The confusion is increasing. The memory is decreasing. And so scans are being arranged and blood tests is being arranged. I was at the doctor's with her yesterday. She was crying. She was angry. She was shouting, there's nothing wrong with me. Why are you doing this to me? I can't believe you're doing this to me. And throughout all of that, I held very firm, very calm, because I know she needs this support, whether she thinks she does or not. I know she does. And I put my hand on her arm very lovingly, very calmly, and I spoke very quietly, and I said, I love you, Mum, and it's going to be okay. And she stopped her tantrum and looked at me and just went quiet. It was challenging. It was difficult. But I've realised through all of this that unconditional love is what I am demonstrating here. I expect nothing back. I demand nothing. It doesn't matter what she does or doesn't do, whether she agrees or disagrees, whether she cries and tantrums, whether she is resistant or compliant. It doesn't matter what she does. My actions are my responsibility. She's my mother, and she's my responsibility to a certain degree. But I've been very clear with social services and the doctor, I will not and I cannot be her full-time carer. And if they think that I can and will, they will not put the support in place. And I said the same with Mum. I cannot continue to do all this stuff for you. So you either allow help or there will be nothing and no one. So we've got there in the end. And now the ball is rolling to put various support and tests and scans in place to support my frail elderly mum. And through this last few years since I've seen her, since I came back to this area, as long as I treat her like a small child who is vulnerable and is lost and scared, then it works. It works for me and it works for her. So we found a way through so that in her last few years of however long she has left, that she feels loved and supported despite the past. So it made me question, for those of you with very loving relationships with your parents, it can be much easier to want then to give back to them in their older age, to say my parents have always been there for me and I want to now be there for them. It feels a karmic cycle, a karmic rebalancing. They did for me, now I do for them. For those of you like me who have had little to no relationship with your parents, little to no support or love or kindness, how then do we find it in our hearts to move into that space of support and love and care in their older age, in their vulnerability? Can we do it? Should we do it? Could we do it? It's for each and every one of you to find those answers within yourself. And if you find that you can't, that's okay. If you find a way through, like I did, by believing she is 4 years old, and that is working for me, because I can tolerate the difficulties, by treating her as a child. Because with children, you see, we do love unconditionally. We don't expect from a child. Children are very loving generally, but we don't expect them to support us or care for us. We don't expect anything back. It's our job to love and protect them, to help them feel safe, to be there for them. And we do it without question, most of us. I certainly did with my children, and I'm sure most of you did. Actually, people listening to me and watching me, all of you would have done that. We don't expect anything back. But when we get older, we expect our parents to support us. We expect our parents to always be there for us. And the dynamic changes because we shift roles. The child becomes the parent becomes the child. And in that role, the dynamic works. It's a beautiful place, somewhere in the middle, where we have an adult-to-adult relationship. Okay, this is transactional analysis. It's a little bit like a triangle. At the top, we have the parent. At the bottom, we have the child. And in the middle, we have the adult. And when we are children, we're in child mode. Parent is in parent mode. Adult mode doesn't really happen. As we grow up, we come out of child into adult. And if we're lucky, our parent comes out of parenting mode down into adult, and we have two adult to adult, equal, respectful relationships. And then gradually, with the decades passing, then the parent, that is now the adult, drops down into child, and the child drops up to adult to parent. Yes? Does that make sense? So you just imagine at the top, parent, at the bottom, child, in the middle, adult. And we expect, and we're back with that expectation, that when I'm a child, my parent parents me. But when I'm an adult, I have stepped up and my parent steps down from parent role into adult. When I'm in my 20s and my parents are in their 40s or 50s, we're adults and we can have an adult conversation. And then when they get old and vulnerable, they drop down from adult down into child, and we step up into parent. And that is the dynamic of many healthy families. If you, like me, are from an unhealthy family, at no point in my life did I ever have an adult-to-adult relationship with either of my parents. My parents have always treated me like a child to not be very nice to. And now they're both in child mode and I'm in parent mode. And we let go of the expectation. We let go of equality and what we think we deserve. You should be treating me in a way that is respectful. You should be treating me in a way I deserve. All these woulda, shoulda, couldas and expectations, when they're not met, create great pain and great disappointment. So, in my experience through this, my definition now of unconditional love is to love without expectation or demand. And that includes expecting them to behave in a particular way, expecting them to treat you in a particular way. To just let go of all expectations and allow yourself to love unconditionally in the best way that you can, for as long as you can. Because on a spiritual level, we believe in karma, we believe in past lives, we believe in soul groups. And there is no doubt this dynamic and challenge between me and my mother has played out through many lifetimes. Sometimes she's been my mother, sometimes my sister, sometimes my child, and the other way around. In each of these lifetimes, we are learning how to manage those relationships from a place of pure love. I would like to think, and I won't know till I get to the other side and find out, but I'd like to think that this is the lifetime we break those karmic patterns of abuser, abused, of victim, of perpetrator. I would like to believe in this higher vibration that we are all stepping into, that this lifetime is a karmic rebalancing from a place of love and compassion and understanding, that we are growing and expanding in our knowledge of love, in our definition of love. And so it is. So I look forward, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I've never looked forward to any time with my mother. It used to fill me with dread and heaviness and immense protection to cope with it. But I now look forward to the remaining time that my mother has left on this planet, and to be the best daughter that I can be within the energy and time that I have, whilst at the same time being mindful of my own needs and my own energy, but coming always from a place of love. So it's a good idea, I think, to examine our relationships, all of them, from the perspective of unconditional love. Is it a trade-off? I give you this and you give me that? Or is it a gifting of love without any expectation? I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. It's given you some food for thought, some contemplation, and some expansion in your own ideas of what love is and isn't. Have a blessed week. Take care. Bye-bye.